Welcome back to Disturbed Reality. When friends and family mourned the death of Alejo Garza Tamez, aka Don Alejo, the executioner of narcos, one comment stood out amongst the rest. A promise from Don Alejo was as good as a contract. Today, we explore a case that is tragic, yet equally inspiring. A tale of bravery and courage that will live long in the memory among the citizens of Tamaulipas and throughout the whole of Mexico. Alejo Garza Tamez, now fondly known as Don Alejo, was born in 1933 in Allende, Nuevo Leon in Mexico. He was born to working-class parents and had several siblings. The Tamez family worked in the timber industry, running a small sawmill. They certainly weren't well off, but they did enough to get by and raise their children. As a young child, Alejo took a keen interest in spending time with his father and frequently helped him at his sawmill. He would also take an interest in the great outdoors, spending copious amounts of time in the rural, wooded hills of Nuevo Leon. He developed a keen interest in hunting and was renowned for his incredible work rate, even as a young child. As he and his siblings grew older, they were able to help their father transform his humble sawmill into a successful business that even managed to open stores selling the timber in which they harvested. Throughout his teen years, Alejo became an extremely proficient hunter and was known for his incredible accurate marksmanship with hunting rifles. He also took an interest in fishing. At this time, still only a young man, he went on to assist the creation of a local fishing and hunting club, where he would teach the young and old how to hunt effectively. After spending several years working with his father, Alejo wanted to expand his horizons and chase his dreams. After saving some money, Alejo purchased a 200-hectare plot of land in rural Tamaulipas. The land was a barren wasteland, just desert and tumbleweeds. However, in a few short years, he created a ranch that contained various cattle, barns, and structures. As the years passed, Alejo would then go on to employ locals to work on the ranch, and was said to enjoy a great relationship with his employees. The community were grateful for the ranch, as it provided jobs that were lost in the failing orange industry in the area. He named his ranch Rancho San Jose, which was named after his father, Jose Garza, the man who taught him the meaning of hard work and kindness. Over the years he spent creating his ranch, Don Alejo also went on to acquire a large collection of rifles for his hunting trips, all of which he would keep in his ranch home cellar. Don Alejo was living the dream life. He managed to turn his passions and hobbies into his living, which I'm sure many of us dreamed doing. However, by the turn of the 2000s, things began to change in the state of Tamaulipas, mainly due to the increased presence of criminal activity, mainly due to the Gulf Cartel, who by this time were arguably the most powerful criminal organization in Mexico, largely down to the help of Los Zetas, the then Gulf Cartel armed wing. Although initially the cartel didn't interfere too much with locals, extortion would sometimes occur in the local area. Some reports even suggest that throughout the 2000s, prior to 2010, cartel members had tried to extort Alejo, though he refused and told them to leave his premises. Nothing further would come from these incidents. However, in 2010, the state of Tamaulipas was plunged into chaos as the Gulf Cartel and the Zetas had now split and subsequently went to war. The Golfo-Zeta War was without doubt the bloodiest in Mexican narco history, and the violence wasn't contained within the cartels. Local civilians and innocent people were greatly affected by the chaos. Massacres were carried out. Children were kidnapped by the warring cartels to be used as soldiers, homes were stolen and used as cartel safehouses. It was utter carnage. Lives were ruined and families were destroyed. At this time, it was very common for rural property and ranches to be stolen by cartels so that they could use them as makeshift safehouses and training grounds. Don Alejo expected the worst, and was said to be extremely worried about the day when one of the cartels would come to attempt to claim his ranch. the ranch he had spent his entire life building. He also felt a strong sense of responsibility over the safety of his employees given the situation. Ultimately, Don Alejo would decide to prepare just in case that day ever came. He dusted off his old rifles and organised them in his basement should he ever need to use them. In the AM hours of the 13th of November 2010, 77-year-old Don Alejo was startled by a convoy of trucks approaching his property. This wasn't traders or somebody looking to do honest business, it was Los Zetas. The convoy of trucks stopped, and out stepped numerous heavily armed sicarios. One of the sicarios approached Alejo and demanded that he handed over the ranch and informed him it would now be property of Los Zetas. They gave him the ultimatum: leave within 24 hours, and if you're still here when we return, you're dead. Don Alejo took a moment and simply replied, "I'll be waiting. I'll see you in the morning." The sicarios, bemused, scoffing, and looking down at the old man, simply reiterated that they would return in 24 hours. As they left, I'm sure they believed Alejo was bluffing. I mean, what could a 77-year-old man do to around 20 combat-aged men? Well, little did they know, a promise from Don Alejo was as good as a contract. Alejo couldn't go to the police as many officers were compromised by the warring cartels. Don Alejo had two choices: scrape up as many possessions as possible and leave, or attempt to protect what he had spent his whole life building. And of course, he chose the latter. As his workers arrived for the day, he rounded them up without letting on that anything was wrong, and declared that they go home early so that they can enjoy a long weekend with their families. He also instructed them to take any of their valuables that they left on the property, as well as the cattle. This was a strange request, but they trusted Alejo, so they did as he instructed. Once his workers had left the property with the animals, Don Alejo prepared for war, and he would be a one-man army. He went down to the basement where he kept his hunting and sporting rifles, and he then strategically placed them in all of the doorways and windows of his house, with plenty of ammunition prepared. He also boarded up the windows and doors. He spent the day preparing for the worst. However, he still made time in the evening to call his wife who was out of town, knowing deep down that more than likely it would be the last time he would ever speak to her. "You know what, my love? I love you very much." His wife replied, "Oh my love, me too, me more." Alejo responded, "Tomorrow, God willing, we are going to talk early." Alejo didn't let his wife know the danger he was in, but he said to his wife he would try and call her 8 AM the next morning. By this time, night had fallen and he was waiting for the attack, but as the hours ticked by, nothing. Sun was about to rise, and Don Alejo may have felt that it was an empty threat from the cartel. However, at around 4 AM, Alejo heard the hum and roar of multiple truck engines outside his property. The Zetas had arrived, and were circling the ranch in formation as they flashed headlights, honked their horns, and fired gunshots up into the air. Initially, nothing happened, and the Zetas had assumed the old man had left his farm. However, the sound of a gunshot had filled the night sky, and it wasn't from one of them. This set the Zetas into panic mode, and a battle ensued. Alejo had boarded up the windows, leaving gaps where he could shoot out of, and he went from window to window, taking shots at the Zetas. Due to the darkness, the Zetas couldn't ascertain as to what window Don was shooting from, and they blindly shot at the property. In the ensuing gunfight, Alejo's marksmanship would come in handy. He dropped Zeta after Zeta. He had killed 4 of them, which resulted in the Zeta convoy retreating into the darkness. Don maintained his position, waiting for them to return. The Zeta sicarios were flustered and panicked. They couldn't go back to their bosses empty-handed, defeated by a 77-year-old farmer. So, they drew up a plan. In the trucks, they had heavier weaponry, which included grenade launchers. The Zetas once again approached the property for a final showdown with Don Alejo, though they were too cowardly to engage in a gunfight. Alejo let off more shots and hit 2 more Zetas before one used the grenade launcher to bomb Alejo's ranch house to smithereens. At this point, the battle had gone on for several minutes, which alerted the military, who were now closing in on the area. Instead of entering the ranch after bombing it, the Zetas fled the scene, leaving a total of 6 men behind. 4 were shot dead, and 2 were unconscious due to being shot by Alejo. The military quickly arrived at the scene, and were still vigilant following the gunfire and explosions. They discovered the bodies of 4 Zetas on the outside of the ranch, as well as 2 who were unconscious. The soldiers then entered the property, that was now full of bullet holes and debris. They cleared room by room, until they found Alejo. They found his body in the doorway of his bathroom, with various wounds to the body and the head. After being hit by multiple pieces of shrapnel, as well as being shot, it's believed that Alejo then dragged himself to the bathroom to have one final stand against the Zetas before he then passed away. Soon after, military and police cordoned off the scene. As 8 AM rolled around, Alejo's wife Letitia became concerned that she had not received a call from her husband. She called Alejo, but no answer. So she then instead called one of his workers, Joaquin, sensing something was wrong. Joaquin had already arrived at the scene and spoke to Letitia. He stated that there were military at the scene and that he couldn't get in the property to see what was happening. Letitia asked him to tell the soldiers he worked on the farm and to find out what happened to her husband Alejo. She asked Joaquin to call her back, but that call never came. Initially, upon arriving at the scene, the Mexican military suspected multiple gunmen to be battling it out on either side, probably expecting it to be linked to the Gulf vs Zetas war. However, when they discovered the lone body of 77-year-old Don Alejo, they expressed their shock at how one man with old hunting rifles could go toe-to-toe with an estimated 20 cartel members and hold his own for so long. Don Alejo was a man of honesty, principle, and hard work, and when Los Zetas came to his property demanding he hand over his life's work to them, he simply refused. As one of Alejo's close friends said after his death, he would never have worked his whole life to one day let someone take everything from him. That is not his nature. After Alejo's murder, in the following days, his death was buried by local media, despite the magnitude of the event. Many speculate that the reason for this was because the Zetas threatened local journalists and newspapers not to cover the story, as ultimately it made them look bad, as well as making them look weak to lose 6 men at the hands of a single 77-year-old farmer. It wasn't until the news network Milenio covered the story that people would become aware of the story of Don Alejo, the man who went to war with Los Zetas. The Zetas did their best to silence the story of Don Alejo, but they failed, much like they failed to take his ranch that day, because a promise from Don Alejo was as good as a contract. Only a few days before his death, he bought his wife a rosebush, joking that he would never have to go to a florist again to purchase her roses anymore, stating that you now have an infinite supply. Following his death, the rosebush was planted on his ranch in his honor, and of course, to provide his wife with roses as he promised. The name and story of Don Alejo has permeated Mexican culture, with various songs, artwork, and stories created in his image. He still remains a beacon of hope and strength as Mexico still continues its struggles with organized crime, where everyday citizens continue to be victimized by such thugs. Ultimately, the story of Don Alejo is a tragic tale, yet a tale of inspiration. They say a man dies twice, once when his heart stops beating, and then when someone mentions your name for the very last time. I think it's safe to say, Alejo Garza Tamez and his name will live on for many decades to come. Rest in peace, Don Alejo. But anyway, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it if you can enjoy this sort of content. If you're new here, if you could hit subscribe, would be much appreciated. And also, if you're feeling super generous, hit the like on the way out. If you want to get in touch with me, my Twitter is in the pinned comments. You can drop me a DM, etc. Any topics you want covering, please feel free to drop me a DM. My Twitch link is also in the pinned comment, as is a link to my Patreon. As always, guys, thank you for the support. But anyway, as always, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.